In an interview with Sportskeeda this week, Randy Orton opened up about his experiences and his relationship with Vince McMahon. Vince ran WWE for nearly 40 years and he was a dominant and often controversial figure in the wrestling industry. And his departure in 2022 marked the end of an era. Now that McMahon has stepped down from WWE, Orton clearly felt comfortable to share some insights on his former boss. He also shared his thoughts on what it's like to work for WWE's new owners in TKO and under Triple H. In the interview, Orton spoke about a time where his back was in bad shape. At 35 years old, he approached Vince and requested a lighter schedule.
I came to him when I was 35 and my back really started going, and I pleaded with him, like, man, I gotta not do as many shows, maybe do half the tour and be able to recover. And he just looked at me and was like, oh, I need you on those shows, Randy. Mother Nature gets us all. And to hear that and go, okay, well, I guess there's no other, thing I can do other than just, wear myself out down to the nub until, I can't walk anymore for this man.
We know that Vince's leadership style was very demanding. He was a no days off kind of guy, and he clearly expected his performers to have that same mindset. Not even Randy Orton, at 35 years old, had the confidence to put his foot down. Vince prioritised the business over the well-being of his wrestlers, and Orton's story here absolutely proves it. That he wouldn't allow him to take time off to heal up is kind of disgusting on Vince's part, but Orton's experience isn't unique. Many wrestlers have spoken about the physical and emotional toll of working under Vince. It was only last week where Mark Henry spoke out about how he didn't want to become world champion. On the podcast, he said that he practically had to beg Vince to not make him world champion during his Hall of Pain period. The relentless schedule, the lack of personal time, and high physical demands are all part of the job, and it's an even bigger part of the job when you're the world champion. Vince's approach to the wrestling business didn't leave much room for recovery or to have a personal life. In fact, I'd go as far as saying that Vince's treatment of wrestlers was harsh and manipulative at times. So many of his wrestlers over the years looked up to him as a father figure, and I think that he might have abused that position. Vince, of course, never lived the life of a wrestler. He lived his life in the wrestling business, but he never had to do what he expected his performers to do.
The Triple H era and the era before this is totally different.
Yeah.
What is different for you that you like so very much?
Off the top of my head, and listen, I love Vince. He gave me so many opportunities, but I think it was kind of time for him to move on. It's unfortunate that it happened in the way that it happened. But it's nice having people in charge of me that understand how important it is for you to be home for birthdays and home for Thanksgiving and home for Christmas. Vince McMahon had us, he had Raw and Monday Night Live where, everyone's doesn't care if he had kids.
Obviously, Orton's feelings towards Vince are still very complicated. I agree with Orton here that it was time for Vince to move on. Even if these abuse allegations hadn't come out, I still think it was time for him to go. If you think back to the years 2017 to 2021 in WWE, and just remember how insufferable that time was, and it seemed that Vince was doing things just to spite us, the fans, and to spite his wrestlers too. Remember the Lana and Bobby Lashley storyline from 2019. There's an example of Vince spiting both the fans and the wrestlers at the same time. God knows Rusev looked like he wanted to jump off the Titantron the entire time. Orton went on to talk about some of the differences between the Vince McMahon era of WWE and the Triple H era and those new owners of the company, TKO.
It's nice having him out of there, and it's nice having his son-in-law, Triple H, running the game. Nick Khan's great. Everybody with TKO that's come in, stepped in, they seem to get it, and it's a different era. Yeah. It's a different era.
The RKO and TKO.
You're right, exactly, like you said. But I think the way that they care for talent nowadays and make sure that talent's good, and if they need a little bit of a break, we're only human, they get it most of the time.
Thank you.
He noted that Triple H and Nick Khan understand the importance of work-life balance, that it's refreshing to work for people who allow him to go home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is a total shift from what Vince was like, where he didn't care if someone had kids and a family, he was always prioritising his live shows. Whereas Triple H is clearly a different man, with a different mindset. He was a wrestler himself, of course, and he knows firsthand the physical and the emotional demands of the job. He empathises with the wrestlers and understands their needs because he's been there himself and he's done that already. Orton also mentions Nick Khan here. He's the president of WWE and he's a man that understands modern businesses and how they should be run. And TKO is the new parent company of WWE and it's a massive billion-dollar corporation. There's no way that TKO would get away with running the business like Vince did for all those years. This interview with Orton was a real insight into what Vince was really like to work for, even though I think he's clearly going to hold back a little out of respect for Vince. Over time, I hope more wrestlers start coming forward and giving us their thoughts on the former godfather of pro wrestling. There's a link to the full video interview with Orton from Sportskeeda down in the description. Go and watch it there and subscribe to those guys too. They do a great job.